out on the streets with my head in my hands. I've got no plans, only to see you again. Don't get me wrong, sometimes I like being kicked on the ground. I'm not that strong, but then I come to my senses. Yeah, I'm coming. You can feel my power, and I feel what is real when she feels me. And I feel what is real when she feels me. And I don't be afraid. Don't do that man with the scar on his face. It's a charade. It's just the way you've been living. Yeah, I'm coming. You can feel my power, and I feel what is real when she feels it. And I feel what is real when she feels me. Yeah. And I feel what is real when she feels me. And I feel what is real when she feels me. Yeah. And I feel what is real when she feels me. And I feel what is real when she feels me. Yeah. And I feel
Hi everyone, Dan here, and I just wanted to put a little snippet about AstroWorld and what we do because I want to start getting the word out because I think it's becoming more and more of a giant community, and I want to get the word out to some other people. So what we do at AstroWorld is We hold astrophotography chats on Wednesdays at 9 p.m. and Fridays at 8 p.m. Eastern time. And we just talk astrophotography. Wednesday's more of a techie kind of advanced intermediate, and Fridays is more of a newbie kind of thing. So if you want to check us out, and if you want to, hang out with some semi-decent people that like to go off the rails a little bit and have fun while they're doing it, come check us out at astroworldweb.com, and you can check out the schedule, and you can sign up for all the free giveaways that we do. We just gave away an Eagle 4 Pro, an Optolong filter kit, Charles Brackenstein's books, and a whole bunch of other stuff. So come to AstroWorldWeb.com, hang out with us, have a good time, and as always, remember to keep imaging, keep educating, and clear skies. And I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
All right. Where did my color go? Got your head in the sand. You can't be in control, using a powerful hand. I wanna be you, I wanna see you. Don't taste the kisses of hate. Don't try to tell me, don't try to sell me, don't try to say it's too late. You're gonna push me to the edge, back me in a corner, making me stand in your shoes. Push me to the edge, hot little cutter, it's black and white and blue. Black and white and blue, yeah. All right. Cat learns to ring a bell. Rat gets free from the maze. We can be taught to love. We've got to learn a new way. I wanna see you, I wanna be you. Don't taste the kisses of hate. Don't try to tell me, don't try to sell me, don't try to say it's too late. You're gonna push me to the edge, back me in a corner, making me stand in your shadows. Push me to the edge, hot little color, it's black and white and blue. Black and white and blue, yeah. I wanna be, I wanna see, don't taste the kisses of hate. Don't try to tell me, don't try to sell me, don't try to say it's too late. Push me to the edge, back me in a corner, making me stand in your shoes. Push me to the edge, hot little color is black and white and blue. Yeah, black and white and blue. You're going black and white on the edge, back me in a corner, making me stand in your shoes. Push me to the edge, hot
on my telescope now. Get what's wrong with this thing.
The lost Lone Ranger, can I break this spell? Do one thing right, I make two things wrong. If I want that fine line, I will always take the fall. If I don't do the left, I can hear from the right. I sleep all day long, and then I'm breathing through the night. I've seen a lot of bankers, and I've seen a lot of cops. I've seen a lot of lawyers pull out all of the stops. I've seen a lot of children with their parents in their hands. I've felt a lot of women who refuse to understand. Well, I don't think I understand why we're making such a fuss. And I don't think I understand what's come of all of us. And I don't think I understand why we take this world for granted. I just want to get right back to Guitar Players Planet. You see it in the papers, you read it every day. The riots and the fires going on in South LA. The muggers and the government, they're all wanting the same thing. They take all your money and whatever else bring. And I don't think I understand why we're making such a fuss. And I don't think I understand what's come of all of us. And I don't think I understand why we take this world for granted. I just want to get right back to Guitar Players Planet. Take me. And I don't think I understand what's come of all of us. And I don't think I understand why we take this world for granted. I just want to get right back to Guitar Players Planet. 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 Guitar Players Planet.
Are you ready for the next solar eclipse? October, annular eclipse. Up. Don't let your glasses fall off when there's a solar eclipse. You might hurt yourself. Let's try that again. Are you ready for the next solar eclipse? Are you ready for it? October 14th this year is an annular eclipse, followed by April, another total solar eclipse, and you can get your own branded AstroWorld telescope solar glasses made by American Paper Optics today on the website, astroworldtelescopes.com, or give me a call, 516-273-3771, and we can get you a set of 4 of these for $9.99. Come on down again, AstroWorldTelescopes.com, and keep imaging as long as you don't have a solar shade on. Keep educating and clear skies, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye. All right, how's it going, everybody? Let me just make sure we got everything going here. It looks pretty good. Yep, we got audio and everything's good tonight. We have a special guest tonight. We have George Hilios, the creator of Hocus Focus tonight, which is something that we all have questions about, and I guarantee you, probably not one person out there probably uses it the correct way. Or interprets graphs and the plotting's the correct way. So we're lucky to have George with us tonight. I had the pleasure of meeting George again almost a year ago at NEAF last year. My buddy Jim introduced the two of us. We had a little lunch together. So welcome, George. Welcome to AstroWorld TV. It's great to have you, man.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for the warm welcome. I've got a special treat for you all. So when I was first invited, I got very excited, and I started thinking about all the things I was going to present to you. And then life happened. So I'm going to give you an on-the-fly demo and just sort of take this sort of Q&A style. But my hope is to educate you about, what it is I do, findings I've had, why I built Hocus Focus the way I did. And then we can sort of just go from there. So without further ado, let me share my screen. I can do that, right?
Yeah, so I think on the bottom it has a little computer button kind of and asks you what screen to share. And
got it.
There you go. Perfect. And
hopefully this is a familiar screen for some of you.
I'm going to make you a little bit bigger here. There we go. Yep, there you go.
All right. So what you're looking at here, for those of you that haven't seen it, is Nina. Now, for those of you who don't know what it is, this is an open source astro imaging application. An open source means all the code written for it can be seen by anyone. Anyone can contribute to it. Our fearless leader, Stefan, he makes sure the code stays sort of clean and healthy. But the overall mission here is all about democratizing access to first-class tools for doing astro imaging and analysis. And one of the things that happened about a year and a half ago, as Nina was gaining a lot of popularity, was we got all these crazy sort of use cases people were asking for. How do I support X, Y, and Z? Things like discovering planets and doing speckle photometry, and what Stefan and I ended up working on is breaking out a plugin framework so anyone can contribute. And if you click here on the plugins tab, you see I have 3 installed, but available. This is what happens when you open source something and make it free for contribution. You have so many people contributing interesting technology. Like there's this tool that Nick Hardy built for doing exoplanets. There's integrations with GNS, Goodnight, I think it's Goodnight System.
Yep.
Plane wave integrations. I've written a couple of these plugins, in particular, a 10 micron tools. I have a GM 1000 mount, so I wrote some apps for that. Hocus Focus, which I'll talk about today, and Orbitals, which helps you track and image comets. So one of the things we'll look at here, if we go to the imaging tab, when you install Hocus Focus, actually, let me go first to options. There is, under imaging, you'll have the ability to choose what your detector is, what your autofocus engine, etc. are. So when you install Hocus Focus, the default is set to Hocus Focus, but you can always disable it. You might say, hey, I like your autofocus engine, but I don't like your star detector. Said no one ever, but the ability is there. So once it's enabled and you go into your application, you might see something like this. And one of the things that I did that was actually quite important to me when developing Hocus Focus was taking a scientific and iterative approach to perfecting your focus, right? And that requires more than did I get a perfect U curve, right? Like You may get a perfect curve, but did you get that by happenstance because you had a good clear night, or you had a good evenly distributed star field? As you know, you don't want to leave your focus to chance because you could ruin an otherwise good night of imaging. So while I was developing Hocus Focus, various people would say, how do I fix my focus? And I wanted to be able to know exactly what they were experiencing. So there's this feature in options, plugin rather. Let's go to Hocus Focus, where you can save and give it a path. And what that does is it creates a folder, and I'm going to open this and show you what that looks like. This is the same data I brought with me to NEAF, by the way, during my presentation. There you go. And what it saves,
I don't. We just see the Hocus Focus.
Actually, you guys. Oh, it's because I have the other thing. Okay, I'm not going to bother showing you.
Well, you can drag it over to the other screen if you want.
Actually, I'll show you this in a different way.
Okay.
So let's go check that. So when you go to reprocess saved run, can you at least see the select folder that popped up?
No.
No.
You guys can't. Oh, okay. I'm just going to share my screen instead of the window. Let's go back here. Let's see. Entire screen. Let's do this instead. Because I do actually think
there you go.
Yep. So you guys see this window here now,
yep.
right?
Yeah.
And what it does is when you save an autofocus run, you click autofocus, you pick the save folder, it copies every single image you took during that imaging run so that you can replay it. And when you replay it, it uses whatever your current settings are, meaning you can change your settings and see what would have happened to your focus run. And I'm going to show you an example that a user sent to me saying, I can't get my focus work. Can you help me? So they saved it. I said, send it to me. And if we pick this folder and we have it replay, look at what this curve looked like for this user on that night. It's pretty bad, right?
Yeah.
You see here on the right. Now, when I implemented, I didn't have outlier removal, so it was even worse. Or like you see, this one was discarded because it's clearly an outlier.
Right.
But even if you completely ignore this, I mean, that curve isn't particularly great. It's very slanted.
Yep.
It's not very even. And these error bars indicate we don't really know or have good certainty what the true half flux radius is of that exposure. And so you should be scratching your head and say, well, how do I get a better fit? Well, this dot rather, was at approximately the 5,000 focus position. So here's how you would debug that. Nina has this simulator camera. If you click equipment, go to camera, one of the options in the dropdown will just be the simulator camera. And when you click options, you get this dialog that lets you open an image. What this does is lets you, when you take a picture, it just shows this image. So you're kind of like pretending as if you have a camera connected. You can do this during the daytime. Now, I already have that picture selected, but I'd show you what this looks like. When you open that folder where you have that save run, here's the whole list of all the saves. And like I mentioned earlier, this is approximately the 5,000 focuser position. And here it is in the file name. So if we click open, close this out. My screen just hung. There you go. Connect your camera. We have a connected fake camera. Go back to imaging. Let's take a picture and see what that looks like. So here is the image that was taken. Let's zoom in and see what we see. Oh, look at that. And for those who might know what happened already, I have star annotations turned on. You can turn them off. You can turn them on, right? And so what you're looking at here is the actual box that the star detector drew around the star that it thinks it found. Some of these are okay, right? Like this one mostly fits. It's not great, but it's all right. And it's showing the HFR that it measured for each star. It's also showing the ones that it rejected. I mean, these are the same color, so you don't really know. I wouldn't worry too much about what each of these mean. I'm still sort of writing some documentation, so you can mouse over and so you can read the documentation and understand like why it was rejected. But for now, just note that this was rejected, which was a good choice, but this wasn't. And so you should ask yourself, like, why, right? So pretend you're the detector and you see this box. It probably had a hard time telling the difference. Is that background or is that a star?
Yep.
All right. So at this moment, 9 times out of 10, you have to change the sensitivity of the detector, right? And in this case, I would actually recommend decreasing it so that you reject this star instead, right? And so what that form that takes, I tend to just drop into the advanced mode right away when doing this type of tuning. Because there's this one setting here, you really only end up touching 1 or 2 of these in practice. Brightness sensitivity is the main one. To decrease sensitivity, you increase the number. It's a little counterintuitive, but the mouse over, the tooltip over it gives you some details. So we'll change this to 30. See what happens. Take another exposure. It's gone. And if you zoom around the frame with your mouse, you'll see that there was a difference before and after. If you turn on looping exposures, one of the cool things here is it's going to keep taking pictures of the same image and reanalyzing it. So look what happens if I put 10 again. It changes. Look, there's another bad one. So now this is 30. And we feel more confident in the quality of the fits. Let's cancel this. Let's rerun the autofocus. Now, this is the exact same focus run. And I want you to see what impact that has. There you go. Much better fit. Lower error bars in each of these. Now it's still rejected this point because it was a little off, but the point of rejection here is to get a tighter fitting curve that more accurately represents the true optimal focus point. And I know there's a lot of settings here. You probably have questions about what each of them mean. Like I said, I am writing some documentation, but almost every single time it's either I have a Schmidt-Cassegrain scope and half of the star is missing when I'm out of focus because there's a big hole in the middle. There's a setting for that. Or you need to change your sensitivity, particularly for your high focal length scopes. You'll have many faint stars and then have to make a choice. Do I want to boost the sensitivity to pick up those stars, or do I want to decrease it to just sort of leave them out? And most of the time, decreasing sensitivity by increasing the value is the right choice. Telling the difference between the background and a star is difficult. What you are looking at is a very stretched image. Now this one is just a different image, but if I took that picture again, remember that camera is still connected. Here we go. Like we're back here again. Some of these stars like that were extremely stretched, we can kind of see it with our eyes, but the algorithm has a very difficult time picking those up. So yeah, that's just sort of a quick flyby of autofocus. And the biggest feature that any of you should know to make your focus really good is to actually get your exposures. I can't emphasize that enough. So I mentioned that there's this save folder. I'm going to open it again. After you save an autofocus run, open random ones of these. Like here's one. I just picked it. Takes a little while to load. These are big images. There it goes. And come here and take another exposure. Look at it. Make sure your boxes fit well. And when you see things don't match up, tweak it until it works. And then you can try your autofocus run again just to really make sure you get tight fits. Did I even click that? Probably not. There it goes. Right. So I'd say every single time someone comes and says my focus isn't great, the first thing I say is, have you looked at it under an annotator? And so that's the biggest advice I can give any of you. Now, I've also gotten some feedback and suggestions from the community, particularly Voyager users, who say like, why don't you use AI to make this better? The reason I don't, and I want to just sort of play this out, is because the algorithms in that case are very opaque. We don't really know what's going on under the covers, right?
Okay.
We don't know what were the boxes it chose, what did it fit well, what didn't it. So the reason I wanted to go for an approach like this is what it's doing. It's very clear and obvious. And if it's not a good fit, your eyes will tell you that.
Gotcha. Oh, that's really cool because that's something that I really never I messed with a little bit, but I never really I've always had kind of with focusing, getting that curve right. I've definitely struggled in the beginning of getting it right, and this definitely. So just so we're right out there with the crew out there. So once I'm going to say, since you switched over, we'll say hi to Eric, because Eric joined us from a hotel, and so Eric is here. Do we have audio, Eric? Are you there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you guys hear me?
Oh wow, you sound better than when you're at home.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
So
wow.
what was I saying about just getting the routine down of getting your focus routine down can be kind of daunting, especially if you don't know what you kind of you're just playing with numbers, and sometimes you play with numbers so much you do more damage than good. So you really kind of know what you're messing with as far as that. And correct me if I'm wrong, the Nina Discord, what was it, Isaborn, I think that's on there quite a bit. If you have, I don't know who Isaborn actually, I don't know if that's actually Stefan or not.
It is Stefan.
It is.
Yeah.
Okay. So unbelievable response time on any issues you may have, whether it's with Hocus Focus or something else. I mean, I don't know. This guy doesn't sleep. He just is up.
No, he doesn't.
He's just not. Either he pays like 30 people to watch Discord, or he's up like 19 out of 24 hours a day. But very responsive to that. But so. Eric, I know you had some questions regarding as well. I'm sure that Dave has some questions as well. And I know you have a lot more to show us. So, I mean,
no, first off, thanks for George. Nice to meet you, and thanks for joining the show and hopping on with us. Yeah, I'm in Quincy, Illinois right now on a team. I guess one of those
he's working
those team meeting type deals, like team building type deals. So yeah, but no, it's one of my things is right now is been focus, and I'm gonna have to apologize because I just hopped in, so I'm gonna have to watch the first start of your presentation later, because I do have a Schmidt-Cassegrain, and while Hocus Focus, it does work for me, it seems to, I really need to get things locked in, because even though I will do Hocus Focus and I'll do the aberration inspector and I'll take a look at, and it's saying the HFD is say maybe at 2. I just recently put in some started doing some processing, and the lights are all coming out as far as their star analysis like at around 4 or 5, things like that. So I'm sure that might have something to do with it, to really tighten things up, because I honestly haven't gone into the advanced side, because I'm so new transitioning from one acquisition tool to Nina, that I have still quite a bit to learn on utilizing all the pieces that are in Nina. But yeah, that's one big thing, because having that Schmidt-Cassegrain and not having that tighter focus, and because it can be very unforgiving using these at a long focal length, that I'm gonna have to definitely go back and check it out again.
So there are a few settings in Nina. Let me show you. Let me show you one. So I'm going to switch back to sharing my screen.
Yep.
Here you go. So in the simple mode, and this is like step number one when you are setting up Nina for the first time. I tried making a simpler, more sort of condensed version of the settings that is more approachable based on just people sending me their data and me seeing like what settings work for most. So the first thing here, right? Like if you have a modern sensor, putting this at typical or low is recommended, right? That's number one. Pixel scale, you'll see here, typical, wide field, long focal length. Like if you have a Schmidt-Cassegrain and you're it's an 8-inch or something, you're definitely in long focal length territory. What this setting does is it looks for larger stars, right? There's if you think in wavelet terms, like literally uses wavelets here, it's looking for larger structures. So it looks for larger structures. It increases the sensitivity because stars will be dimmer, etc. So that's one of the first things I think you should set. And then when you're looking at focus range, I typically in that case also set a wide range because you're moving your focuser quite a bit, right? You're not just taking tight small focuser movements around your optimal focus point. You're moving big distances and getting like a nice wide V curve. Because some people actually only want to move a little bit around their optimal focus, and then I say put it on typical. But in an SCT type setup, you set both of these, take your exposures and see what happens, and then go from there. But the thing is, when you change these basic settings and click advanced, these advanced settings correspond to those basic ones you set. That's all they're doing. It's like a packaged version of these more advanced settings. And so the Schmidt-Cassegrain, one of the problems you have is that these stars, when you get out of focus, there's a big hole in them, right? And one of the things that the star detector in Hocus Pocus is doing is saying, like, all right, I drew a box around a star. What is the chance this is actually a star? And it uses a few heuristics. And one of them is, what is the percentage of pixels in that box that are bright enough to be part of a star? That's this max distortion variable here, right? This number needs to go down for Schmidt-Cassegrain because there's going to be missing pixels in there from the star. It's a donut.
Yep.
Right. And so you'll find that it's kind of like magic. When you do this long focal length, wide range, and then change this to say 0.3 or 0.4, you'll see just star detection happening. And the best way, I think the advice I gave earlier, I'll mirror it again here. Turn on your annotator, look at individual pictures from your autofocus run, start at the ends, and you work your way in. Because at the ends is where you're going to have your worst star detection. The stars are bigger, they're harder to find, etc. So yeah, you'll see as that secondary obstruction shows up in your star that you'll be missing a lot of them, or worse, misdetecting them. And these boxes will make it play. This is a good match. This is a pretty good match too. And so on. Let me go back to the main screen. There you go.
Okay, so it seems that yeah, no, totally. So when it comes to those longer focal length scopes, like like what I have with the Schmidt-Cassegrain, you don't need to do a lot of changes, but there are certain changes that do need to be put under consideration. And it's just maybe just a small number of them. Like what you were referring to of the sensitive, such as the brightness sensitivity and the max distortion, things like that. Maybe modifying those things. I can definitely give that a shot because with mine, I'm always binning for the most part 2x2. So I'm already getting double that double pick, resolution. I'm changing that resolution already. So I'm increasing those pixel sizes. So this will definitely be a very good thing for me to check out, the next time I'm able to image. So thank you.
I mean, life is getting in the way of this, but like every time I've told an SCT owner to use those settings, it has worked for them, right? And it's happened so consistently. Why don't I just add a basic setting for it? Good question.
That's not a bad. Yeah, that's a good lead off.
Right? Like I've been meaning to. It's tough. I'm trying to find time
sure.
to get it done.
Life gets in the way for sure. Life gets in the way.
The SCT on, off.
Yeah, exactly. Something like that. Yeah, SET on, SET off. So, from what I'm understanding right now, just to recap, just to keep this, take a look at, definitely you're looking at in advanced mode, looking at what we were talking about, the max brightness and the that max detection, I believe is what it is. This max distortion rather, and then when you're in the the not advanced mode, the pixel scale, make sure it's set to long focal length and your focus range is at wide range. Or probably a couple of those, few things just to get started for us Schmidt category guys. So that's good. Thank you.
And the power tool here is like turn on the looping when taking that snapshot, use the simulator camera and just change values. See how it affects things, right? Like once you get in the habit of change, you'll get a sense for what each of the settings do. Really, those are the only 4 ones you'll use in practice. I've actually had people ask me when I first built it, and then they stopped asking because they realized that really those other ones are just kind of set it and forget it. And I found the values that made sense for them. They say, well, why don't you remove it? And I mean, this actually gets to ethos, right? Like, why did I do this? What is my thought process when I build this? And one of the things that really matters to me is taking a scientific, transparent approach to this, right? And I apply the same one to aberration inspector, and I'll talk about that next. But the idea there being, you should know what the detector is doing. You need to spend time acquainting yourself with it, and then you make it work exactly for your setup. Never touch it again.
Yeah, right? Exactly.
Set
it, forget it.
Yeah, it's exactly right.
I'm curious,
look at it.
George. So when you set it up, like in Nina, I have 3 different apertures that I'm dealing with. So I have an 81, a 127, and then I got a 8-inch RC. And in each profile, does that setup stay the same for each profile?
Yes.
So once I set it up for that profile, it's always going to be in that profile. Perfect. Okay.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
To be precise, the plugin settings live in your profile.
Good.
That's awesome. So let me ask you a question, George. I mean, I got, before we delve a little bit deeper into Hocus Focus, what made you make Hocus Focus, and what's your background and the capability that you have to actually do the programming and all the software?
So I'm a software engineer. It's what I do. I got into astronomy about 4 or 5 years ago. And when I found Nina, I immediately wanted to contribute to it. And so as I acquired more, toys, I realized that there were certain capabilities missing that I was like uniquely qualified to contribute to, like the dome implementation. I got an X dome, so I implemented dome sync, things of that sort, right? So this, service and democratizing access, that matters to me as well. So it's really what drove me. But what sort of inspired Hocus Focus was 2 things. One, the first crack at focus in autofocus was done a couple years ago in sort of a very guess and check type method, right? By one of our contributors. He just sort of took a crack at it, and it was full of magic parameters. He's like, I changed this setting until it worked often enough, right? And even to this day, he doesn't know why it works, right? And so that's actually the stock. I mean, it works, ish, right? It gets
ish.
And
disclaimer, ish.
Ish. That's a very precise scientific term. And so that was one. And that sort of got me interested in thinking about the problem. But what actually was the catalyst for me diving in and doing it was that Chris White thread on tilt and looking at images and building the curves in the corners. Where is each of the corners of your image coming into focus? Having a focus curve for each of that and saying, like, can you use this to determine, is my back focus off? Am I tilted? It was a very clever approach, and it's like literally what tilt is, right? If your sensor plane is tilted with respect to your optical axis, yeah, one part is going to come into focus before another part. I mean, it like logically sort of makes sense. And he sort of devised a methodology around it that was like really manual and very painful. But like nothing else did it. And it was loaded in a spreadsheet, draw a graph, things of that sort. And some of you might remember that thread. It was like 130 pages long in Cloudy Nights. It just went on and on and on. And actually the thing that got me into it was a debate between Chris White and Frank Freestari, right? Frank's they're both very smart, very like opinionated people, and they just fundamentally disagreed on whether that was like a viable approach, right? Chris brought up his points. Frank is an optical scientist and said that you can't do it this way. You can't look at a single image. And I was like, guys, let's settle this with science, right? Like, let's do both. Which one is correct, right? And so then I ended up getting in the middle of that and saying, you know what? Let's do it, right? The people care about their tilt correction. I've been wanting to build a star detector anyway. Let's apply the scientific method to settling this debate, right? Let's do the four corners approach. Let's do this thing that Frank is theorizing will work better. That's the sensor model, and put it to test. So science motivated me, and thus Hocus Focus was born. So I had to solve the star detection problem first, then the autofocus one, and it was like peeling back the onion, and finally got to aberration inspection.
So who won the fight?
I think so actually the four corners one works pretty well. Frankly, I think Frank was right. Right, being able to visualize that sensor model, really helps dial in your settings, but it's harder to get it right, and your star detector has to be very, very spot on. And that's the most common complaint I hear from people is I can't get a sensor model out of this, or it has a very low match rate. I say, well, have you tuned your star detector? Most of the time the answer is no. Or what does that mean?
Garbage in, garbage out.
Talks like this are useful for the community because I just haven't written the documentation yet, so I get to talk about it instead.
Yeah, there you go. And let's see if there's any questions. What's Mike Gibbs has a question. He says, well, we're not even there yet. Actually, we're going to save that question for later. I think it's a next steps type of question.
Okay. But one question that Frank had was, just to be clear, the settings that we were just talking about in the case for with the Schmidt-Cassegrain, these would not necessarily apply to a Schmidt-Cassegrain with a hyperstar or say a Rasa.
That's right, because it wouldn't have a secondary obstruction. That's correct.
It's gone. Yeah. So.
Yeah. Because
no more donut.
It's not as long as. Yeah. You don't have that. Well, you still have somewhat of a donut, but it would be because you still have the primary, right? You still have the primary mirror, don't you?
Yeah, but
there's no secondary.
Straight back into the sensor.
There's no secondary.
Yes, but there's no secondary.
Yeah.
But there's no secondary. Correct.
Yeah, and that's what creates the donut. So I mean,
correct.
Well, actually, you do. The obstruction is literally the camera, right?
Yeah, the obstruction is the camera, but you won't be at a long focal length, though. You won't be at a long focal length because a Rasa or a Hyperstar, you are at f2, and you're only at maybe 4 to 600 millimeter focal length.
So I'm sure the effect is different, but it will be somewhat donut-ish. That's right.
Yep.
So so it wouldn't be long focal length, but you would maybe consider wide?
I would actually just jump straight in and changing the distortion value. Now note that the
Okay.
long focal length, there's not much magic to it. I was just thinking like, what's the right way to describe it? It's just that when you
Okay.
are in focus, your stars are bigger. So look for bigger things
Right.
is all it's really saying.
Right. Gotcha. Understood.
And
Alf.
what would you consider long? Anything over what?
Oh, anything over 1,000, basically.
Okay. Yeah.
And
that's definitely my 8-inch.
Dennis had a question.
That's right.
Are there any recommended presets anywhere else in Nina, or do I just start out with Hocus Focus, the main menu?
At this point, Hocus Focus is like mature enough that for all intents, we consider it our stock focuser engine. The only reason it's not in Nina proper is because now I can change it without stepping pushing a Nina update.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Sure.
I get donuts on one side of focus with my refractor. Not sure how.
Is there a question?
No, somebody made a statement. Al made a statement that he gets donuts on one side of focus with his refractor.
I've seen that too. Yeah. So actually let me show something. So
Sure.
let me go to share my screen again.
Yep.
And here it is. So this, we can share a link to it. This is actually the presentation I gave
Last year.
NAFLA. Yeah. And there was actually one, if I can find it, here you go. Here's an example of, and my refractor does the same thing. Like, so this was an example for my machine, for my setup. At one end of focus, you have this thing that looks like this. And the other end of focus, you have something that looks like this, right? Where this is kind of getting a little donut-ish.
Yeah.
Right. And the point is the detector will see something different here because this is like this flatter object, whereas this has a lot more structure along the outside. And therefore, your actual curve won't be an even hyperbola anymore, right? This is if you apply an even hyperbola to the measurement, and this is if you apply a tilted hyperbola, which is something I added in the last year. So the point is, yes, you can be in a situation where you have donuts or things that look kind of like donuts on a refractor.
Wow, so that's interesting.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Yeah, I get that sometimes on my refractor, where it'll.
And I mean, in that case, the fix wasn't change the detector. The fix was change the fitting algorithm. And now that's the default setting, is to do the angled hyperbola where it's not necessarily just even on both sides.
Gotcha.
Right. One of the things that I
feel better.
No, it's not broken, Dave.
No.
Well,
Again,
I'm usually between 0.98 and 1.0 in my hyperbolics, though. Usually, and a nice decent curve. But sometimes it's short on one side, longer on the other. But I think that's all about where I'm starting anyway.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and mine right now, if I would pull up, say, some current autofocus that I've done, they seem more shallow, I would say. The curve would seem a lot more shallow and wider than it would seem tighter. But that's why I'm looking forward to trying these new things out to see if now making these changes and also looking at the aberration set, looking at the stars through the aberration setting is are things getting a little bit better. Now my other thing is is being still roughly very new to Nina, and is dealing with tilt. and trying to understand. And I almost need a Nina for Dummies type setup, you know, where I can understand, you know, certain areas of, say, Hocus Pocus or the aberration inspector, or even, you know, just especially as I'm running through an autofocus and I want to see that tilt. Because one thing is, I even have a Rasa, and the Rasa 8 is notoriously known for having certain tilt issues and understanding, you know, where that tilt is coming from. But at the same time, also dealing with that in back focus when it comes to my Schmidt or even my refractor. So I don't know if you all have had a chance before I hopped on to talk a little bit more about, you know, those features yet.
Actually, I think he's getting into that next. I think.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So
I mean,
you want me to
hop to it, or are there any other questions? All right. Let's let me share my screen again.
Got it.
And just keep going back and forth. Here we go. Here's Nina again.
You're gonna be a pro at this at the end of the day. So
I actually haven't run this with any of the saved autofocuses I have locally. So we are going to do a live demo.
Nice.
That should strike fear in the heart of any software developer here.
Absolutely.
To do a live demo.
Oh,
that's almost
usually...
that's the Windows Bill Gates thing. Remember?
Hey,
it's like you're gonna do a live thing with Windows.
Eric, I got one side. I got one side of the carpet that George is sitting on. So we're just gonna. You can have the other side.
All right, let's load this. Actually, let's go into this. Remember I had changed this setting to 30 and got that to work with the sensitivity example. So the thing is, with aberration inspection, all it's doing is an autofocus run with extra analysis, right? So if you save an autofocus run at any time, you can load it into the aberration inspector. So you don't have to do this live. The reason I raise that is because you might be having cold hands depending on the night when you were dealing with tilt, and you might just want to get a quick autofocus run and deal with that later. Totally reasonable. The point here is you can replay saved autofocus runs and see what tilt was sort of implied by them and get your settings to work. Now, aberration inspection is far less forgiving than regular autofocus, and I'll explain why in just a moment. So this looks like, oh wait, no, I actually did a regular autofocus. Okay, so load a saved autofocus. Let's let it go. So I mean, this is literally the same curve you guys were looking at earlier. When it's all done, it gives you this curve. Now, a few things here. If you turn off sensor model, you get the Chris White model. This is the four corners analysis.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
This is how you kind of get to do both, right? You can see what does one model tell me versus the other. And there's also what tilt is implied by that approach, right? In this case, it's telling you to turn it. You have some slight tilt, and then you have to make various adjustments. I'll explain what these mean, but I'm going to turn the sensor model back on just so we can look at the other one. This one, I think, produces something that is, I find, more visually intuitive. We actually got a really good fit in this model. You can see the R squared here is 0.91. For any of the statisticians in the room, I apologize. I know this is a crappy metric, for goodness to fit, but it's the best one I could come up with. So there we go. And what this does is what this tells you, based on whether it's pointing down or pointed up, is how's your back focus? Is it severe? Is it close? Is it a little too far? And when you find things that are deep red or deep blue, you're far off. This whole white thing in the range means you're pretty much within your CFZ, your critical focus. So actually, this is an example of one I would say, like, don't touch it, right? It's close. Now this thing says, okay, you do have some tilt. You could probably get a little bit more out of it. Yeah, this picture here is saying maybe take the left side of your sensor and bring it closer to the was it the telescope and sensor. Yeah, so it would be take the left side of your sensor and move it further away from your the lens on your telescope, right? So I mean that's where like telescope is up and sensor is down. It's a little hard to visualize, but I think the if you've asked, well, how do I know what's left top? And I say, yes, that's right. That's hard. Because your driver might flip an image, your optical setup might flip an image. It's very, very difficult. And so there is itself a separate process you can go through to figure out like what's left and what's right. And it's sort of it's a dumb approach. You're in the dark, put a light in front of the telescope, cover half of it, see what half is covered, right? Okay. And over time, you can figure out like what is left, what is right, and actually physically label it on your camera so that as you do your adjustments, you know what to change.
That's a good idea, yeah.
But yeah, so what you're seeing here, though, was my attempt to say, hey, this is fine enough, don't touch it. But like tilt is not extreme because we saw that curve and there's a bit of red, a bit of blue, but like you probably could squeeze a little bit more out of this by making an adjustment. And my metric there was based on your the size of your pixels and your focal ratio, like, is it worth bothering? And that's literally just at the corners of your sensor, what is the focus position compared to the center, right? If they're close and it's within the CFZ, don't bother, right? In this case, it's a little far, so maybe bother a little bit.
Okay.
But one of the, here's another one, contour map. This one doesn't look too bad, right? We're seeing some 5.4 full width half maximums here. In the opposite corner, it's 5. In the center, you see like a 4.8. So it's not like a really flat field. It's flat-ish, right? But I mean, simply even being able to see, it's like if you loaded this up in PixInsight and got a contour map, it'd probably look something like this. And for the others who like those, was every camera vendor I've seen distributes that that image that says like when you have if you're too far in focus or too far out of focus, your back focus rather, too far in, too far out, you know, with all the hash marks pointing one direction
the stars,
or the other.
The radial stars,
Yeah. So this one's saying like what direction is your eccentricity pointing throughout the field. And this one's a little random, but what you find is that when you get close, like it doesn't really matter, right? And these turn like red when the eccentricity is pretty bad. And you have to have eccentricity that's pretty extreme to know what direction it's headed, right? So this, for example, is 0.26. For all intents, it's a perfect circle, right? This is 0.46. It's a pretty good circle, right? So again, seeing everything here means you're not really getting a lot of tilt, but there is some, and you could adjust for it. So yeah, that's one of the modes you can do here too. Is you basically, if you have a camera and a focuser connected, this will actually be enabled. And what you end up doing here is make an adjustment to one part of the sensor. Like if you have a 3-point, adjust one of the points. If you have a 4-point, adjust opposite one, either opposite or adjacent ones. I mean, you can't really just change one,
right?
In the rectangle or square. But the point is, make one adjustment, run this again. Make an adjustment, run this again. And one of the things you might find is that if you don't touch anything and run it again, you might get a very different result. If that happens, you probably have inconsistencies in your star detection, like, and you should look at
Okay.
that. Maybe I can drop out of the sharing screen for a moment and make a few more points. So let me come back here.
Cool.
So some of you may be wondering, like, what the heck is this thing doing? Like, what does this even mean? And conceptually, it's pretty simple, right? When Frank devised this approach, he's like, listen, with all these fancy pants like algorithms, are like, let's keep it simple. And his thought process was like, what is actually happening in the optical? Because he's got a PhD in optical science. Like, this is literally what he does. He goes, it's a parabola. It's a 3D parabola. That what happens in terms of optics, because it's being refracted by the lenses in a refractor or being bounced around in the case of a reflector. And so can you model that and use that, direct that orientation of that parabola to determine what my tilt is, right? Like literally model it instead of infer it from a picture. And so the way this is done is determine the point of focus for every star in the field, right? And like pause and think about that a bit, right? When we do an autofocus, we're doing, say, like measuring half flux radius for a couple hundred stars, a couple thousand stars. We're averaging them together. If 10 of them are wrong, who cares? You're still going to get a good average, right? If 10 of them are wrong here, you're screwed, right? Because like we're doing it one star at a time, right? And so imagine, like, so this is literally what we're doing. Like I'm saying frame to frame, here are the stars and their measurements. And if I'm missing some measurements for some stars, I discard them. And then I get to a point where I have this two-dimensional plane and coordinates and numbers associated with them. And those numbers are, what was the optimal focus point for this star, right? Once you have that, you can model a curve onto those focus points. Now, if everything were perfect, what you would see is every star across the entire field came into focus at the exact same time. Perfect flat. That's the dream.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And if you have back focus issues, you'll see the corners come into focus at the same time, but the center will come at a different, either like earlier or later.
Right.
That comes in the form of a big, deep curve. Right. That was what you were seeing in the sensor model. So the key thing here, though, is there an angle tilt to that curve, and is it flat? Like, what is there is no notion of a flat parabola. There is a notion of a wide parabola. Mm-hmm. And so this one gets modeled. What is the radius of the parabola? The bigger the radius, the flatter it is. And so that actually is what the sensor model is picking up. How wide is the parabola? The wider, the better. And then when I say, is this an appropriate amount of tilt? I then literally say, all right, for the model, evaluate the corners and tell me, how much do they agree with each other? How far off are they from the center? And if they're close enough, based on the size of their critical focus zone, the precision of your, not the precision, just like the step size in your focuser. Mm-hmm. I mean, if each step is 10 microns, that's certainly different than if it's sub-micron precision, right? Like, so the units on your step size matter, right? And the units, of course, from those points are in terms of steps, not like distance.
Yep. Cool. So I got a couple of questions. I know there was one from Josh. We kind of answered it in chat. That this stuff works with ZWO hardware, except for the ASI Air, right?
Actually, yes. If you're using an ASI Air, I used to work at Microsoft. I know how to mess up your Windows computer. So I put that into Nina and Hocus Pocus.
Nice.
Actually, I do have a bit of trivia for you. When I was at Microsoft, I wrote the line of code that reboots your machines after Windows updates. So you can thank me for that.
Oh yeah, thanks.
Okay, yeah, thanks a lot.
That's great.
You're welcome.
You have,
You're welcome.
your system's gonna shut down in 3 minutes. I'm like, I'm
That's right.
imaging right now.
What do you mean you're gonna shut down? What are you talking about? That's funny.
Optimized for most pain and discomfort. Yeah,
That's
that was what
exactly
I was
right. But so if you were to implement something else into Hocus Focus, what would the next thing be for you to kind of throw in there and take it that step forward?
So there are two things that I'd be pretty excited to work on, and it really is just time. The one of them is having some sort of training algorithm for what is the orientation of your sensor,
Okay.
right? Like when I say the top left needs to be moved down, like actually saying determining which corner that actually is, right? Like how to label left, right. And that actually enables a different solution too, right? Imagine you had motors on your tilt device, right? If you can model where each corner is, you can drive the motors there. And so the guy who, Keith, who built the Octopi, like when I was making this, I was trying to convince him there's a market here. Right. And he's like, but there's no tools to assess tilt. I'm like, I'm literally building it. Send me one for cost. I'll make it work. And I mean, that was actually how this was born. Like I didn't have a tilt device. He sent it to me for what it cost him to build it and materials. And then he made a lot of them. But
still making them.
He's still making them.
Yeah.
But like one of the things he was thinking about is like putting a motor on them. And I was like, yeah, I'm interested in solving that problem. Haven't had the time to, but yeah, that's one area. The second one is sort of actually not that hard to do, but I'm interested in doing it. Is like right now the focus algorithm goes a fixed number of steps out and then does the whole shebang, right? But if we focused like 20, 30 minutes ago, we don't need to do that, right? We could go out less of a distance, still take as many points maybe, but like have the focus, the images just be closer because you know you're already near your optimal focus.
Right.
So there would be like a fast focus.
That's cool.
That's a good idea.
There's a couple of questions in the chat, I think. Let's see, what was the first one?
No,
Question.
I think a lot of people are on board with, somebody build an automatic tilt device.
Oh yeah, you put little 4 little motors there, 4-pin motorized tilt adapter, $783 for their M42.
And ZWO will then sell it with a secret implementation.
Oh.
Exactly. Yeah, they will.
Oh no.
But yeah, it's just it's just one of those things where how small or thin can you get it, because there's always that concern depending on the your rig or your setup, the back focus, and how much back focus is that going to take up, especially if you're using monochrome or anything like that. So you have to have
let's think about that for a second, right?
And think about that. So
let's think about that for a second. So you got, I don't know if I can pull it out. Yeah, I can pull it out here. So you got something like this, right? One of these guys, right? Straight from the closet at desk, right?
New German, right?
Yeah. This is the CTU. This is the M48 version of the CTU. Now, Gerd Newman figured out, hey, listen, I could take these little grub screws on the outside, right, to kind of adjust your tilt, right? So why can't you just motorize those as they go in and out? So now you're not affecting the only thing that you're putting in there is some sort of motor to kind of move those grub screws in and out.
And the Octopi design also accommodates that too.
Yeah.
Right. For those of you that haven't seen it, it's a pretty big box, and there is space on the outside towards the camera to put motors on them.
Wow. I mean,
there you go. Yeah,
that's going to be awesome. If that's the next thing, the next best thing, that would be great, because that would create a lot. You'd be able to fix your tilt from your, in the middle of winter from your, your computer inside.
And,
Yeah.
and then
And I mean, like,
you'd be doing a focus run and a tilt run at the same time with Hocus Pocus.
There you go.
Right?
That's the way to do it.
I know. I'm gonna get a little nerdy and geeky for a moment here.
Do it.
Like,
Do it, man.
It's stuff like this that gets me really excited, right? Like, we have all this really wonderful technology that NASA's building. We've got these really nice observatories that have excellent optics, extremely expensive, that we're grateful for seeing the images that come out of them, but like are inaccessible to us. And so I think the idea that we can take this commodity hardware and squeeze every ounce out of it, like, just gets me excited, because that will just improve the quality of our data, the quality of our images, and it benefits everyone, right? Like, so you can now still spend a couple $100s on these correction devices and get better quality optics that you might have to pay tens of thousands of dollars for.
Yeah, absolutely.
For sure.
Sorry, that impacts your business, but
it's all good.
less money coming your way.
It's all
but
good,
that's
man. There's always something new and fantastic coming out, so it doesn't matter,
Yeah.
But Ernie Jacobs had a question: is if you have a recommendation for a star field for doing the analysis, would you use an open star cluster for this, or would you rather probably a more spread out kind of?
Yeah, I think the problem with the star clusters too is they're so close together, the detector occasionally gets confused, like double star it up. I did put an option in the aberration inspector to just go to zenith. Frankly, like that's a reasonable idea, because then you're eliminating flexure from the equation, and there tends to be, depending on where you are in the world, obviously, like at zenith,
potential atmospheric distortion and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's right. So I would say,
I think I saw that when I was trying to do mine. It said try to go to zenith and then do it there, and I remember doing
And
that.
one more question: does the orientation changes depending?
Does the orientation change depending on if your camera is on the back of the rig or in the front, such as with the Rasa or the Hyperstar?
I mean, honestly, every setup is different. Even your driver can impact whether it flips. And here's an interesting fact: ASCOM, the layer of ASCOM also flips it, right? And so if you're using ASCOM versus native driver, you might have a different orientation too, and that's just because the formats disagree on, like, is it transposed or not. It's
interesting.
Like, this a long-winded way of saying you just have to test it.
And to your point, the best way you were recommending to test it is to get maybe a piece of paper, a piece of cardboard, and maybe shine a light and take a quick photo. So this way you can at least know what's up, down, left, right, and just move it around. And then just start taking notes based off of those. Maybe if you take 4 separate images or 8, whatever that is, and just figure, okay, I've got every the cardboard or piece of paper covering this side. I've taken an image. Okay, so now I have an idea. All right, this is the left side, and then tilt it again. All right, take another image. Okay, now I know this is the bottom or the top of the left side.
Right.
And then, like you said, put a piece of tape on. Once you figure that out, put a piece of tape on your rig so you know this is top, this is left, and
Yep,
that's right.
Exactly.
That's right.
That's a great idea. I have to figure that
out. Mike was asking, what is considered wide field versus typical?
Well, honestly, like, at this point, I don't know. It's been long enough since I did it. I'd actually have to look at the code. Like I said, I owe the community documentation for this. My thought process, though, when I did it, was kind of the lines like, the further out you go, the bigger your stars are going to be. right? And so if you know you're going to go pretty far out of focus, in terms of like how you're building your focus curves, just like pick wide and pick long focus and wide range. And those two will give you the stock settings for like the biggest stars you can get. But really the gold standard here, and there's not that many combinations. Do an autofocus, take a couple pictures, and then when it's daytime, try them all out. Like actually see how they fit when you're near focus, when you're far out of focus. I mean, like that's the theory behind it. Like it'll do a better job of matching the bigger stuff. But I would say don't commit it until you've actually tested it.
And when you say testing it during the daytime, can you go over that? What you mean by that again?
So one of the things I was showing earlier in Nina, there's a one of the cameras in the dropdown is called the Nina simulator, the camera simulator. And the settings for it let you pick an image. Meaning whenever you take a picture with that camera from then on, it'll render that image. And it'll also star detect it. It'll pretend as if an actual camera were connected, which means if you turn on the annotator, you can just keep taking the picture in loops, change the settings, see how it changes things.
Gotcha.
Interesting. They say that's cool. That's a great tool.
Yeah.
That is. So I'm going to have another thing to us to remember about is utilizing that Nina camera simulator. And
that works with
previous, your previous autofocuses from your own images from your own camera and just meshing them together and then figuring things out.
And that works with the aberration inspector as well.
Mm-hmm.
So with that image, you can run aberration inspector on that image, and you can potentially, but you're not going to be able to adjust that, right?
Correct. I mean, like it's less useful
that you have to do live.
But what it could be useful for is how do I change my star detector settings to make this consistent so that when I do this again, like I'm not futzing with that. Maybe it's 20 degrees outside. And you want to be able to be as in and out as possible.
Right.
Jerry R. just had a nice comment, said, I have learned more over the last year as an AstroWorld member than I learned over the past 5 years of my Astro career.
Well, we appreciate that, Jerry.
Thank you, Jerry. Appreciate it. Appreciate the you sticking around through the crazy off the rails years too. So thank you.
Tune into AstroWorld. Stay off cloudy nights.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
morale.
Nothing. Yeah, good for the morale, and nothing gets cloudy nights. But a lot of times when you have guests such as George here and others that are the developers who you can actually spend a little time with, listening to them and asking questions and getting things straight from the developers, mouth, versus that game of telephone or what have you from cloudy nights. It's so much more beneficial,
Yeah,
so
absolutely. I mean,
sure.
we've been, George, I don't know if you know this, but we've been, doing this show.
I'm sorry. Tom just said I've learned how stupid I
am. That's our picture of the year winner.
Tom takes 3 hours to put one little lawn chair together.
That's our picture of the year winner on our calendar. Tom Peter being a wise guy.
Wait, I see some tilt in that.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of tilt in that
That's
one.
Awesome.
But
oh man, that's awesome.
So and it looks like I'm gonna be in Tom's area. Maybe Eric, you are too. For the I don't know what your plans are, George, for the solar eclipse is coming up on the 8th. Right?
I'm going to be in Canton to check it out. Yeah, I'm excited.
Nice. Yeah,
Canton, Ohio?
New York, right by the
Canton, New York. Okay.
Right by the Canadian border.
Yep, up by the Buffalo area.
Awesome. Awesome.
Sweet.
Yeah, Eric's from Chicago area. He knows nothing about New York. So
no, absolutely nothing.
He thinks the Statue of Liberty is in New York. That's
Oh, no, I do not. You stop that.
But it looks like I'm going to be heading out to the Indiana / area for it. Just maybe a little
you let
bit
me
better
know.
of a forecast than upstate New York, at least percentage wise is concerned. You know, we'll see. We'll see. You know, who knows?
We'll see.
You know, I'm not going to make it to Texas, but it looks like I'm going to be somewhere between Ohio and and Terre Haute, kind of somewhere in there.
Okay. So George, speaking of the eclipse, I don't know, Dan, if you or Dave, if you have had a chance to talk or speak to what do you normally use for yourself for imaging, and what are you going to be taking with you if you're going to be doing any imaging of the eclipse? Are you going to be taking any kind of equipment with you, DSLR, anything like that? What are you going to be planning to do yourself?
Nice.
That's it.
I'm not taking any gear with me.
Oh no!
I'm just hanging out.
There you go.
Hey, it's all good. That's all good.
I'm on a
Family
revenge tour with this eclipse. So this is eclipse part 2 for me. In 2017, I told the story. I don't even know how many times over the past couple weeks, but I'll say it again.
My wife messed it up.
Yeah. So, and she's outside probably listening to me. She's like, "Why are you saying it again?" So I'm sitting there, and we were at the eclipse. We traveled to Greensboro, South Carolina, and we went there, and I was an idiot. I brought a 127. I had my EQ6R. I had this whole setup going on. I had my computer. I had Nina. I had everything going. And at the end of the day, the pictures weren't that great. I was just like out of focus, just like a little bit. But I only had 1 minute and 8 seconds worth of totality. So I got this thing over my head trying to get focus, and it was a big mess. So I made it a little bit more complicated than it needed to be. So I'm going very, very. What I'm going to be using is my Canon 6D Mark II right there. This and the Solar Quest by Skywatcher, which supposedly is going to find the sun for me. I don't know. We'll and track it. We'll see. It's all it has. We'll see. I'm going to test it probably tomorrow because I got to take I use my Canon for the show. I'm going to switch it out and put it on here and then slam it on the. But I'm sitting there and we're at the eclipse and we're ready to go, and it gets all it starts to get darker and darker, and I tell my wife, I said, "Listen, here's a video camera. As a matter of fact, it's this video camera right here." Little guy, right? Little camera. And babe, whatever you do, once it turns totality and you see people, saying, "Ooh, oh my God, point up. It'll be okay. Just point up and take a picture of it with the thing and let it go." So eclipse is done, everything's over. I said, "All right, babe, let me go see it." And I go and I look at it and I press play, and I'm looking at it, I'm like, cool, you got the treetops and everything, and you got all this stuff going on. And I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. And then all of a sudden it gets dark, and I'm hearing all the people, "Oh wow, would you look at that?" And I'm still seeing treetops and the camera going like this and everything. And then finally I see people's heads go down and it gets brighter again. I'm like, where's the eclipse? Where is it? I was afraid to point it out. I thought it was going to burn out the camera. So this is the revenge tour 2020, 2024 eclipse is the revenge tour. So nobody is touching cameras other than me. So but
That's right.
But it should be fun. Well, I'm sure you're going to have a great time. How many kids do you have?
I got 2.
Yeah, 2.
7 and 10.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
How old?
Awesome.
10 and
great
what?
Ages.
7 and 10.
7 and 10. Oh.
Yeah, great ages.
So they'll love it.
Yeah, it's going to be great.
Absolutely.
You got glasses and everything ready to go?
All ready to go.
There you
Nice.
go. There you go.
There you go. Nice.
I'll be at
Let's
work.
see. I wanted to.
I'll be at work here on the East Coast.
Oh.
I'll get partial. I'll be looking at through my welding mask.
Well, it looks like a friend of mine got a hotel in the he just texted me right now in the in the Indiana area, right outside, like 10 minutes outside the line, for 2 nights. For 2 nights, $1,000. It's $500 a night.
Yeah, that's what I was seeing. It's ridiculous.
Oh yeah, there's no question
to do it now. To do it now.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Definitely waited too late this time. The first time in 2017, I was like a year out, and I got hotels for like nothing.
Because
nobody.
the hotels didn't know that.
They had no idea.
It took them 6 months to realize. Oh,
they don't know now. They just know that it's booked. My friend called up the hotel and says, "Wow, that's weird. Why is it booked up in the beginning of April? We don't do any business in April, dude, because there's an eclipse and you're right in the line of totality." It's like, oh, maybe we should raise our prices. No, that's okay. They're higher enough.
Everybody's going to be in your parking lot that afternoon.
Oh, I think like 5 cities over there, like already said that it's going to be a state of emergency because of the influx of people.
Oh my God!
Yeah, it's going to be millions of people coming in, so it's going to be absolutely nuts. But I was curious to see if anyone else had any more questions here.
There was one
for George.
Yeah, Mike Gibbs might have been already asked, but what autofocusers do you use on your gear?
What do you mean?
What focusers do you have? Do you have moonlights? Do you have optic?
Oh yeah, I've got a Nightcrawler with the absolute encoders on it. Works very nice. Nice. I have a Tech 140 as well, so it's it's a pretty consistent setup. But yeah, I very much enjoy having the absolute encoders there. The Nightcrawler works really well. It's very consistent.
They're unbelievable. They are so
Ron does an unbelievable job with his marksmanship.
That was one of the things that I was on. I was using the EAFs and everything, and I was like, it was like one of those things where I could get really good pinpoint stars, and it's like they say, you buy once, cry once, and man, it's best investment I've ever made.
Once you get into
and
this,
I bought and I have 3 setups, and I bought the adapters for all 3 setups, and it's easy to switch from one to the other when I put it, whatever scope on the mount. It's easy to swap it over, and oh my God, it's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, once you get into those sub-micron focusers, I mean, it's incredible. It's really night and day on that, because your focusing just becomes so precise. It's incredible.
Yeah, and it's nice. It's got the rotator built in, so in Nina you could just go slew, center, rotate, and it sets it up perfect for how you want it framed and everything. Boom, done.
So, and you sort of teed me up nicely. In addition to slew, center, and frame, there's another thing I added to Nina about a year or 2 ago, and that's the center after drift.
Yep.
So as you're taking images through the night, if you're off, it'll move you back, and it never takes you any time away from your imaging, because it doesn't.
That was you? You did that?
That's awesome. That was
Stefan told me, he's like, I don't think that's going to work. I remember having a debate with him a week after I built it. He goes, okay.
It was great because you could be sleeping and you don't realize a bank of clouds rolls in for 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and then it goes away, and Nina goes, "Oh, wait, we got to go back to where we were."
Yep.
And bang.
Exactly.
The runaway guy.
You have to throw out a few frames, but for the most part, it's awesome.
At least you have a recovery mechanism. That's right.
Yeah, it's great. It's great.
That's awesome.
I mean,
how far do you usually set it for? How far off do you go when you put your settings on?
I mean, I go a couple degrees. I mean, I
think it's like 5 degrees or something like that.
Yeah, it's not too far. I mean, I typically think like if I'm 200 pixels off, I should move back. Yeah. So, but I mean that's also one of the other things that there are settings, like if you acquaint yourself with the advanced sequencer in Nina, there are a lot of triggers have been evolving to make it so that you maximize your imaging over the course of the night. One of them is, oh, I happen to have drifted off. Let me come back, right? Or, my glider disconnected. PHE2 sometimes does that. Like, let me reconnect it. Things of that sort.
Yeah, that's Nina is I think hands down the best imaging software out there.
Well, there's,
and for open source and free, it's just, I send them a donation every month, and it's amazing.
There's one thing that I keep on going back to. Every once in a while, I go back to this. Now, with the advanced sequencer, and this just started happening to me recently. The advanced sequencer I used to have in the global triggers on the top part of the advanced sequencer. I used to have in the global triggers auto meridian flip. The meridian flip used to be there. And so it would check no matter what I was taking an image of. If it was time to do one, it would do it. Now, and this could be total idiot user error me because I am glitch boy. Now, no matter what, whenever I start a sequence and I press play with meridian flip in the global trigger, it starts off with the meridian flip every single time. No matter if I'm pointed straight or not, I could have just polar aligned and everything. I hit play and it starts with a meridian flip.
Yeah, I think there might be a tooltip that says don't put it in global, but I don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah, I have to see.
I ended up taking it out, and it works fine. And I put it in the actual sequence events, the regular triggers, and so I dropped it down. But for like a year, it's always been in the global. I never had a problem with it, and just recently, it's just like. I'm like, why is it doing a meridian flip? It's pointing at Polaris. I'm just starting the sequence, or it didn't even move anywhere. So I took it out. Now it's fine, but it was just kind of a weird kind of thing.
So for me, I went on Patriot Astro and downloaded his advanced sequencer templates. Mm-hmm. So there's one for one-shot color. There's one for broad or narrow band.
Yep.
And I use the narrow band one that he has, and then I just add the start and the end. I'll add certain things for like I have the alto and giotto. So at the end, it'll flat scope, warm the camera, close the flat panel.
Yep.
So that way it's putting a cover over the scope. And then after that, I go outside of that and I'll hit equipment, shut down all equipment. And then that way, when I wake up, everything's off, everything's done.
Yep.
All I got to do, if I have to cover my scope. And then put his basic sequence startup, template at the top. And then everything else, it already has laid out the meridian flip, autofocus, fluid center, all that's there. The only thing I might have to add is wait for time. If I can't start at as soon as I get everything up and running, I'll tell it to wait till whatever time so that I can slew to get, because it's got to be over the horizon.
Yep.
And then I'll put it starts off. He's got it laid out to where it's hydrogen, oxygen, sulfur. But if I'm doing one-shot color, I'll just add an extra smart exposure and do LRGB and just switch the filter types, set up all the times, the amount of exposures I want, everything like that, and press play, man, and it rolls. And if I want to do multiple things in a night, it's just a matter of going to the framing, frame up what I want to do, and then just add that to my sequence, and then it'll just put that next in line. Next in line. And it's great, man.
Yeah, I love the advanced.
For Patriot Astro, those templates he created are awesome, and they work so well. And anybody's using Nina, I would recommend you definitely need to go and download those, put them in your computer, and they work flawless.
That's awesome. I gotta say thank you to our friend Sean Nielsen for consistently kicking my butt and getting me on the Nina train after being a sequence generator pro user for many, many years. And he's like, come on, do it. I said, nah, I don't need to learn. I'm too old. I don't want to learn any more software. I don't want to do it. And it turns out I can't get rid of it. It's like it's really it's a lot to me, getting over that hurdle of being, I guess annoying and not wanting to change. Once I changed, and I never looked back with Nina.
So
Josh has a
one thing
question here. Josh Kovac has a question here. Does Nina have something to detect that I'm hitting trees or clouds so it can pause shooting or move to the next target?
Well, clouds it won't. I mean, but trees it will. I mean,
trees you can set up
you can set up a virtual horizon.
Yep.
And it'll know where those trees are.
Yep.
And then clouds, I mean, obviously, you could do what it's going to do where it will reset if you drift, because clouds roll in, you're going to stop, your guiding's going to not track anymore. And then once the clouds are gone, it'll take a picture and go, oh, we're not back. We need to go back where we were.
Right.
It'll reset.
Yeah, there's like a deeply philosophical question there for the product. I mean, like Stefan and I have talked about this quite a bit, and it's come up pretty frequently. And so, like, people say, I want to stop imaging when I'm looking at a cloud. I'm like, okay, what else are you going to do? Right?
Just sleeping. Right? Like, what are you doing?
Oh, no, I have to delete some pictures from my computer at the end of the day. Exactly. Like, you're going to do that anyways. Right.
Yeah.
However, the point that my guider might send me off a couple of degrees afterwards, you like wanted to not do that. Like, yeah, that's reasonable. So let's have an auto recovery. And that's where center after drift and guided recovery came in as those triggers. But yeah, the point is when people say I want to stop imaging, we say, like, actually, no, we don't want to do that. We might get it wrong and you would have lost imaging. So look at it.
Or you'll get that break in the clouds where maybe you do get a good image in between, the clouds rolling through.
Absolutely.
Or you could just, spend a couple $1,000 and get like a Boltwood 3 cloud sensor and, be done with it. you know. But
I mean, I do think there is a real risk of clouds have come and now it's raining and you want to shut everything down.
Absolutely.
At that point, you're like looking at rain protection, but you've got a dome at that point. So.
Yeah. That's when you have to have a dome and you maybe have the safety monitor.
Yep.
If I'm not mistaken,
correct.
Where you actually, which is an additional purchase of something.
Plus,
if you have like an automatic, so like if your cloud sensor recognizes that either your barometer is dropping or if you've got clouds for a certain amount of time, it will close your dome or shutter for you based on those conditions.
Right. Yeah. So. Yeah, it's great to have an observatory, but that's the only downside right now. I have the observatory. I just can't automate it because it's one of those, it's a Skype pod. It's just a manual clamshell. So you just have to prepare and, just be, a little, cognizant of those types of things. But Lunatico.
Lunatico Astronomia.
Thank you. Lunatico.
Yeah.
What did I say? Lunatico or whatever. But
It's great.
That's the Chicago way of saying it.
Yeah, that's the Chicago way. The way we know how our English is here in Chicago. It's not how it is in the rest of the country.
Hey, you could be in New York with the mothers and the fathers. Hey, yo, forget about it.
Exactly. So, but no, definitely center after drift. You mentioned also, was there any other tool other than center after drift that you would recommend that's probably already in Nina? You mentioned is there a focus tool or anything like that, perhaps, or was it just center after drift?
I mean, those like the main. Like everyone should use these. Like it's free to toss it in there. You might as well. But as you get acquainted with how Nina works, there are various other tools there that are useful. Like Mark Blanc has written some really cool power tools. It's like literally called Nina Power Tools. as one of the plugins. They're interesting containers for doing like smart operations using constants throughout your templates. I was thinking once you get acquainted with the sequencer, you've made that leap. You'd be like, oh wow, I wish I could have done X, Y, or Z. Chances are you aren't the first person to think that, and like download the power tools, and you'll see, oh, Mark thought of that. So I would recommend you peruse those after you've gotten acquainted. There's a couple of other useful sequence items. Another one, like occasionally, like this comes up whenever there's a cool comet out in the sky, is, oh, I want an image, and how do I know what rate to set, how to track it, and where it's going to be? And like, I mean, I wrote an orbitals plugin that'll do that. It'll download the data from JPL, figure out what the track rate is, and then set up PHD2 accordingly. So, it's stuff like that. Just like you really just look at the plugins, see what's available, and you'll probably find something that matches your use case.
So if I was a newbie, because we do have a couple of newbies out there that are just getting used to, entering the world of Nina, if you were to pick 3 plugins, not one of them not being Hocus Focus, what 3 plugins would you be? Because we all want to say Hocus Focus is the number 1 right now. So good.
Well, I mean, thank you. But like, we think of Hocus Focus as like actually being the stock focuser. It's outside for other reasons, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But like
connector would be one.
Connector would be one. Power tools, I think, is useful though. Like learn the advanced sequencer first before you dive into those. There is I think it's called Pushover.
Yep.
Like it can send notifications to your phone.
Yeah.
And so that's useful to get text messages when you hit an error or something of that sort. So I'd say that those are 3 that like definitely start. There's a 3-point plugin. You want to be able to do 3-point polar alignment rather. I mean, we all need a polar align, and it's a very useful tool. It's very fast as well, and you don't even need to see the celestial pole.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. And so, and ZWO's implementation, we know is a copy of it. So there we go. It works.
I like
shameless plug.
I like the what do you call it? What's the one where it copies your
RoboCopy.
Oh, the RoboCopy plugin.
Yeah, RoboCopy. That's a good one too. So if you're using, like I use the Eagle, so I can basically use RoboCopy and it sends it to my main computer upstairs in my office, and everything's already on there.
You're gonna have to show me how to set that up because I never even played with that. To be honest with you,
it's really good because
I'll just sit there and I'll put a USB stick in and I'll do it in the morning. That's how lazy I am.
But then it's 2 degrees outside in the morning. I don't want to deal with that.
Yeah, but you know what? I'm the guy that takes the telescope in every morning too. So
I just throw.
No, I don't. Listen, I'm sorry. I mean, even though I live in a safe area, I'm not leaving my AP130 out in the middle of my backyard. Not in a dome, just on my mount. Sorry, just not doing it.
I was worried the other day, though. We had 30 or 40, 45 mile an hour winds the other day, and my scope was out of it. Please don't fall over.
Well, did that happen to Eric last year, right?
Yes, it did.
Yeah,
That's why I ended up getting the dome.
Yep.
Well, I showed you the picture the other night. It's that 127, 3 counterweights, the extension bar. That mount with everything on it weighs over 100 pounds. There's no way the wind's toss that thing over.
Oh, don't say
I'll tell you a little story. There was a little story of, and I'll preface this by saying I was not there. I did not see this. But Jeff from Camera Concepts was at a star party, the Nebraska star party. And the reason why this came up was because I was planning on driving there last year, and we were just talking about it. He's like, "Yo, be careful of the crazy winds. They'll come out of nowhere, and you have no warning." So he was there as a vendor at a star party, and he's selling stuff just like normal. You know, he's in his tent thing and he's selling stuff. And all of a sudden, two guys come up and, you know, everything's on the tables with the tablecloth. They pick up the tablecloth with all the stuff in it and just start like saying like the Grinch and throwing it on. And Jeff thinks he's getting robbed. You know, he's like, what the hell's going on? You know, and the three guys are picking up half the, come on, you got to go. You got to go. And then they go, and there was a big windstorm coming, right? One guy didn't listen. Just happened to be a gentleman with a 20-inch obsession telescope that they found him after the storm was over with the pieces of his 20-inch mirror in his hands because it lifted up the entire rocker box and everything and lifted it and launched it 20 feet and smashed the entire mirror. So if you think wind can't do a lot of damage, man, let me tell you.
I'm gonna, telling you, mine's on the deck. I'm just gonna put an island in the deck and anchor it. So
There you go.
Yeah.
Until I can be like Eric and get a dome.
I didn't even do that. I'm there. What is it? 4 years ago now, I put the pier in my backyard. So
yeah.
I mean, and I wish I had the room to put a dome. I'd put one in there, but I don't. But so I put a pier back there, and I was able to get my EQ8 on there, and now I just sit there. Literally, that changed everything to me. Not having to set up a tripod and a big mount and everything, and all. Just put my telescope up there, and it's already polar aligned. I might have to tweak it every couple of months. You're done with it.
The only thing for me, I'd have to put a pier in my front yard, and I'm not doing that because in my backyard, I get an extra 15 feet off the ground being on my deck. It makes a big difference. If I put it on the ground, man, then the trees really screw me.
No, that's why you got to get that nice, what is it? The Pier Tech telescoping piers, kind of, you know.
Yeah.
you'll lift the whole scope up, you know.
Yeah.
But
that's exactly it.
Awesome.
Get one of those suckers. You're not worried about it. Okay.
You got any questions out there or no?
No, we don't. Nothing else. But I would say, you know, George, thank you so much, man, for coming on. Really, it's been awesome. A lot of good conversation when we had about Nina. Definitely about Hocus Pocus. And is there anything else that you would like that you want to share as far as anything you're working on that's upcoming Nina related, or anything you want that we should be looking out for, preparing for, or looking forward to as we get close to NEAC and NEAF and all of other stuff?
Yeah. Not particularly. I mean, we often get various questions like, why doesn't this run on Linux or Macs? And we chuckle and nod a little bit. But I'm like, contribute. But it's
make your own.
I mean, Nina 3 is close to release. Like, it's in its latest release build. It's very stable.
I updated tonight.
Don't be afraid of using it. If you use Nina 2 and you're like, oh, I don't want to use the latest version because at one time I installed Windows Vista, things went bad. We say, sorry, you're not going to get updates. You're not going to get updates to your plugins. I stopped updating things of that sort. So I would say make the jump to 3 if you haven't already. That's coming. Another, and I'll leave an unpopular opinion with you. I actually don't use filter offsets.
I don't either.
Really? I don't either.
No, I started to, and then I realized that it can vary from night to night. So,
I don't use. I've
one
never
run
used
to another. I've changed 4 steps because the temperature moves and fluctuations. And
I just do my autofocus after every filter change and after every temperature, like 3 or 4 degrees, and that's it.
Yeah. Another one.
That's one of my things. That's one of the things. Sorry to cut you out, George. That's one of the big things that I'm struggling with is with the narrowband focusing. For some, because I have narrowband, I have these 3 nanometer, narrowband filters, And for some stupid reason, I'm hoping that perhaps some of the settings you've already shared with us can assist, with me able to pick up stars, because there are points where I'm going 10 seconds. I've even have my gain like maybe 300 or 400 or what have you, just so I can, if that would even make a difference. I'm going like 10 to 15 seconds, and still it's a flat line. But it's great when I'm in broadband, no problem. But the moment I hit those 3 nanometers, it's just.
So with my 3 nanometers, Eric, I do 200 gain. This is the 2600. Well, it's the 26M, the IMX571.
Sure,
so I'm doing gain 200, and which is equivalent to gain 100 for ZWO. And 15 seconds, and I get
15 seconds.
Beautiful curve.
One thing that I've seen on occasion is that if I'm doing broadband and narrowband on the same night, I have seen failures that occur where it just doesn't see the stars when you're making that grand change.
So one of the problems there, depending on how you do it, is not every camera actually can change its gain without power cycling it.
Yep.
It says it does, but it doesn't.
That's
right.
True.
And so that's one of the things like beware of. If you're doing both broadband and narrowband, like chances are you're not actually doing what you think you are.
Yeah. That would probably be it, because every time I do narrowband on its own, not a problem.
The other bit I'd leave you with is there's a plugin called the autofocus offsets or autofocus history or something like that. And what it does is it looks at all the autofocus runs you've done. You can put some filter criteria on it. It'll plot a line based on like focus position and temperature. And the idea, you get a very rough level of how your focus changes over temperature, and you can add a trigger, or actually, sorry, it's not a trigger. It's actually a step in your sequence that is a relative temperature change based on temperature, and just put a number in there that is kind of close to whatever you set, whatever you saw that line being. The thing is, this doesn't have to be an exact science, right? So the way I like to look at it, because what it'll do is if it changed like a degree since the last time it ran that command, it'll move your focus for a little bit. And the thought process I had when I decided to like start using it myself is in the absence of doing that, you're basically saying my focus does not vary with temperature, which is not true. Right. And so you just have to be closer to the number than 0. Right. Right. And so set it, even half of it if you're afraid, because the thing is, all you're going to be doing is mitigating the impact of temperature until your next autofocus run. Buy yourself some time, right? Get and I've actually noticed
it just tweaks the focus that little bit as the temperature changes.
Yep.
Without doing an autofocus run, it just tweaks.
But still do your autofocus run. But in the time between, at least like mitigate some of the impacts and stay closer.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah.
I'll have to look into that. Yeah.
So I just got a message from Jim Factocelis. He said, "Hi, I'm watching, and tell George I said hi."
Hi, Jim. Looking forward to our Greek dinner sometime soon.
Yeah. And if you come down to the Long Island way, I'll buy you guys a drink, because I know I owe Jim at least 2. So I had the pleasure of hanging out with Jim a couple of months ago at his observatory on Long Island. It was kind of cool.
Nice.
Yeah. But listen, George. So you're speaking at NEAC again this year, or no? No, you're not.
I don't know why my name is up there. Bob lives in Warwick too. He and I talked in person about this.
Bob Moore. Yeah.
I was like, I'm not going. I don't have time. Sorry. So I don't know why my name's there. But no, I won't be speaking it. I'll be making an appearance. I'll do a cameo, but because it's very close. Well, it's like a 20-minute drive for me. So
Yeah, no, it's about an hour and a half for me. So I mean, it's not that far away. But will you be coming to Neef at all or no?
yeah, I'll come to say hi, but
Yeah.
I won't stay for too long.
Well, definitely come by. We have 2 tables this year. So
Okay.
we're
Yep.
backed up against. It looks like we're going to be making a big 4-booth super booth with Prima Luce Lab, and
Nice.
so
Yeah.
that's what it looks like. So we planned it. We last year we were side by side. Now we went back to back, so we have this whole big square of what we got going on. So it's gonna be a lot of fun again this year. It's gonna be a great time. So definitely come by and say hi. We're gonna be
I'll do
we're
that,
gonna be doing like a group photo probably again on Saturday, sometime during the day in the mid afternoon. Probably will be. So feel free to come by and say hi. Hang out. We'll get
I'll
lunch
do
again.
that for sure. Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right. So, any final thoughts from anybody? I don't see any other questions in the chat. Everyone's saying great show. Thank you to George. Dan apparently looks like a zombie. I don't know why. But I don't know. That's what Matt said.
That's what everybody's saying. So yeah, that's what everybody's saying. You look
I think it's my lighting because I only got half. One of my lights died, so like half my face is darker than the other half. Maybe it's making a strange kind of look. But any final thoughts, Eric?
No. Again, George, thank you so much for spending your time with us. Really appreciate that. And no, again, it's a great show, everybody. Again, if you've liked this show, you appreciate what we're doing here. You enjoy having people on like George that are bringing you this type of information and content. Please don't forget, one, give us in this video a thumbs up. If you see us on the replay, give us a thumbs up. It costs you guys nothing except just a click of the mouse. And don't forget to share this video and let us know how we're doing in the comments and if there's anything that we can do to improve. Also, it is Wednesday. The polls should be up for image of the week. We have 2
newcomers this week.
Yes, we do. We have 2 newcomers, so definitely go check those out. Don't forget to vote. And we will announce that on Friday night at 9:00 Eastern. And again, George, thank you. And you guys have a great night. We'll see you on Wednesday. Yeah, absolutely.
Dave, any final thoughts real quick?
Yeah, George, it's great meeting you. I'm glad you could come on. A huge Nina and Hocus Pocus guy, so I'm actually imaging right now and looking at my focus runs and made some tweaks like you were showing, and it seems to be working really well. So I really appreciate all your information and look forward to the stuff that you got coming up and coming out soon. Excited for 3.0 and see what that's all about. Yeah. So thanks for coming out, and thanks everybody for coming out, and hopefully we've changed the minds on some of those people out there still stuck on that ASIR thing, whatever that
is. Chuckle.
Everything has its place.
Yes, it does. It does.
Yeah, trash cans.
Well, I walked right into that one.
Oh, hold on. Let me take these down and.
Oh my goodness!
Here's another one. We'll put that on. We'll take that one. But anyway, no. George, do you have any final thoughts for us, or?
No, this was great fun. Thanks for having me.
No, well, you know what? Since you're going to be at NEAF, what I'll do is I'll pack one of these for you. I'm going to give you a nice calendar for you, just for being a member and being on the show. And I'll pack one up for you, put your name on it. So when you come to the booth, just pick it up and we'll give it to you.
Appreciate it. I thought you were going to pick up one of those little red boxes. I was like, no, I don't want
it. Would you like one? Excuse me, sir, may I have some more? No, I wouldn't do that to you. But yeah, no problem. But anyway, hey, listen, thank you again, George. Thanks for coming on. It's almost about the time. It's like that. And you know what the funny thing is? I don't think we went off the rails tonight. I think we pretty much stayed on topic, which was pretty darn good. Usually we have a little button. I have a hot button on here. It says when we get off topic, I just like hit the button. But I didn't have to hit it tonight. So thank you again, George, for coming on and showing us the finer points of Hocus Focus and Nina. We're looking forward to all the updates, Nina 3.0 and whatever else you're coming out with. So looking forward to it. And thank you again for coming on and spending your Wednesday evening with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Take
George.
care. Good night, everyone. Bye.
All right, everybody. Have a good night. Take care. And remember, as always, keep imaging, keep educating, and clear skies. And we'll see you Friday night with Picture of the Week. Have a good night, everybody.
See everybody.